The vastness of space had never felt so small. Admiral Zexthera's primary optical sensors focused on the strange vessel drifting through the Kepler 442 system. The ship was unlike anything in the Galactic Confederation's databases. Its hull was a patchwork of metals, some sections gleaming silver, others scorched black from what appeared to be countless battles. Bizarre protrusions jutted from its frame like the spines of some ancient predator. "Analysis complete, Admiral," reported Navigation Officer Clythe, his secondary arms dancing across the holographic interface. "The vessel measures approximately 800 meters in length. Its design, it defies conventional starship architecture." Zexthera's four eyes narrowed as she studied the readings. In her 3 centuries of service, she had encountered vessels from every known species in the galaxy. The elegant curves of Altarian cruisers, the geometric precision of Tauri destroyers, the organic flowing lines of Rex battleships. This thing looked like it had been assembled by madmen. "Energy signatures?" she asked. "That's where it gets interesting, Admiral." Clythe's voice carried a note of confusion. "The power readings are inconsistent. Some sections show advanced fusion signatures, others appear to be running on primitive fission reactors, and there are energy patterns I can't identify at all." The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Zexthara commanded the most advanced dreadnought in the Confederation fleet, a vessel that had brought order to a dozen star systems. Yet something about this crude, patched-together ship made her mandibles click with unease. "Sir," Communications Specialist Yorth spoke up. "We're receiving a transmission." "From the unknown vessel?" "Yes, sir. It's audio only, and it's being broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously." Zexthara straightened in her command chair. "Put it through." Static filled the bridge, followed by a voice that sent chills through every crew member present. It was deep, gravelly, and spoke in a language that their translation matrices struggled to process. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth vessel, Indomitable. To whoever's listening, we know you're out there. We've been tracking your energy signatures for the past 6 hours." The bridge crew exchanged glances. How could this primitive vessel have detected their stealth systems? The voice continued. "We're not looking for trouble, but we're not running from it either. Our ship might look like scrap to you, but she's got teeth. State your intentions." Zexthara felt her respiratory slits flutter, a sign of extreme agitation among her species. The audacity of this unknown species was staggering. A single vessel, clearly outgunned and outnumbered, making demands of a Confederation fleet. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Channel open, Admiral." "Unknown vessel, you are in violation of Galactic Confederation space. By order of the High Council, you will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." The response came immediately, accompanied by what sounded suspiciously like laughter. "Confederation, huh? Never heard of you. And as for powering down..." There was a pause, followed by the distinct sound of weapons systems charging. "Well, we humans have a saying. Come and take them." Before Zexthara could respond, her tactical officer's voice cut through the tension. "Admiral, the vessel is targeting our escort frigates." On the main display, the impossible happened. The primitive ship's weapon systems lit up like a stellar flare, but instead of conventional energy weapons, what emerged from its hull was unlike anything in their databases. Kinetic projectiles, crude but devastating, screamed through space at incredible velocities. But these weren't simple mass drivers. The projectiles seemed to adjust their trajectory mid-flight, seeking their targets with predatory precision. The first frigate, Swift Justice, barely had time to raise its shields before 3 projectiles punched through its hull like it was made of paper. The second frigate, Bright Honor, attempted evasive maneuvers, but the human projectiles anticipated every move. "Impossible," whispered Clythe. "Their targeting systems are more sophisticated than ours." But the real shock came next. As the human ship maneuvered to avoid return fire, it didn't simply change direction. It seemed to fold space around itself, disappearing from one location and reappearing thousands of kilometers away in the span of a heartbeat. They have jump technology, Zexathera breathed. But that's not jump technology as we know it. The human ship's voice crackled over the comm again, but this time there was no humor in it. You fired first. Big mistake. What happened next would be remembered in Confederation military academies for generations to come. The Indomitable didn't just fight. It hunted. It moved through space like a living thing, its weapons adapting to each target, its defensive system seeming to learn from each attack. And most terrifying of all, it wasn't alone. Admiral. Yorth's voice was barely a whisper. I'm detecting multiple jump signatures. The humans, they have a fleet. As if summoned from the void itself, ship after ship materialized around the Confederation Armada. Each one was unique, some sleek and deadly, others looking like flying fortresses bristling with weapons, but they all shared that same patchwork appearance, that same sense of having been forged in the crucible of endless warfare. This is Captain Chen again. You've got about 30 seconds to decide whether you want to fight or talk. Choose wisely. Zexathera looked at her tactical display. 57 Confederation vessels versus what appeared to be a dozen human ships. By all conventional military doctrine, the outcome should be predetermined. So why was she more terrified than she had ever been in her life? Warship Chapter 2. The human captain. The docking bay of the Eternal Dominion had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate the human shuttle. Admiral Zexathera waited with her honor guard, their ceremonial plasma rifles held at attention. Despite the show of force, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was the one at a disadvantage. The human shuttle was as bizarre as their warships, a blocky utilitarian craft that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts. Its engines didn't emit the clean, refined energy signature of Confederation technology. Instead, they burned with a raw, barely contained fury that made the docking bay's sensors fluctuate wildly. When the shuttle's ramp lowered, Zexathera got her first look at humanity. Captain Marcus Chen was not what she had expected. Most species in the galaxy had evolved along similar paths. Tall, graceful beings with advanced cranial development and refined features. Humans appeared to be the exception to every rule. Chen was compact and muscular, with scars crisscrossing, his visible skin like a map of past battles. His eyes were a startling blue, an unusual color among galactic species, and they held an intelligence that was both calculating and wild. He wore a uniform that appeared to be a mixture of military precision and improvised practicality. Behind him came two other humans. One was a woman with short-cropped red hair and cybernetic implants that glowed with their own inner light. The other was a massive man whose arms were completely mechanical, clicking softly as he moved. Admiral Zexathera, I presume? Chen's voice carried the same gravelly quality she had heard over the comm, but in person, it held undertones that her translator couldn't quite capture. Captain Chen, you are smaller than I expected. Chen's lips curved in what she would later learn was called a smile, though among humans, she discovered, smiles could mean many different things. We get that a lot. This is Commander Sarah. Kim, my chief engineer, and Sergeant Major Bulls Morrison, our tactical specialist. The woman, Kim, stepped forward. Her cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Zexathera. Impressive ship, Admiral. Confederation tech is more advanced than our intelligence suggested. Your intelligence? Zexathera's mandibles clicked. You've been watching us? We've been watching everyone. Morrison spoke for the first time, his voice a low rumble that seemed to come from deep in his chest. That's what we do. Chen gestured for his companions to follow as they walked through the corridor. Zexathera noticed how their eyes constantly moved, cataloging potential threats, escape routes, tactical advantages. These weren't diplomats. They were warriors evaluating a battlefield. Tell me, Admiral, Chen said as they entered the ship's main conference room. How long has the Confederation been expanding into this sector? The Kepler systems have been under Confederation protection for over 2 centuries. Zexathera replied carefully. We bring order and peace to previously chaotic regions of space. Order and peace. Kim's cybernetic eye clicked as it adjusted. Focus. Is that what you call stripping mining rights from indigenous populations? Zexathara felt her respiratory slits constrict. I'm not sure what you mean. Morrison leaned back in his chair, which groaned under his weight. We've been monitoring your peacekeeping operations, Admiral. The forced relocations on Kepler 438b. The orbital bombardment of the resistance on Kepler 442c. The labor camps on the asteroid mining stations. You're misinformed, Zexathara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Are we? Chen placed a small device on the table. A holographic display materialized, showing video footage of Confederation forces firing on civilian populations. These recordings are from your own ship's sensor logs. The room fell silent. Zexathara stared at the images, her mind racing. How had humans obtained classified Confederation military records? The question is, Chen continued, what are you going to do about it? I don't understand. It's simple, Admiral. You have a choice. You can continue following orders from a high council that treats entire species as expendable resources. Or, you can do what's right. Kim leaned forward. We know about the resistance movements on 17 different worlds under Confederation control. We know about the slave labor operations. We know about the planned cleansing operations scheduled for next quarter. That information is classified beyond your clearance level, Zexathara whispered. Nothing is beyond our clearance level, Morrison said simply. Chen stood, pacing to the viewport that showed the human fleet in formation. Do you know what we call ourselves, Admiral? The Terran Defense Coalition. We're not an empire. We're not conquerors. We're what happens when people decide they've had enough of being pushed around. You're revolutionaries. We're evolution. Chen turned back to face her. Every species in this galaxy has accepted the Confederation's version of order. Every species except us. Do you know why? Zexathara remained silent. Because we've been fighting tyrants since before we reached the stars. We know what oppression looks like, and we know how to end it. The human captain's words hung in the air like a challenge. Outside the viewport, Zexathara could see more human ships materializing from jump space. She was beginning to understand that the 12 ships she had initially detected were just the advanced scouts. What do you want from me? She asked finally. Join us, Chen said simply. Help us free the people your Confederation has enslaved. Help us show the galaxy that there's another way. And if I refuse? Chen's smile returned, but this time it was sharp as a blade. Then you go back to following orders until the day comes, when someone gives you an order you can't live with. And on that day you'll remember this conversation and wonder what might have been different. Morrison's mechanical fingers drummed against the table. The thing about humans, Admiral, is that we don't give up, ever. The Confederation can destroy our ships, kill our people, burn our worlds to ash, but as long as one human survives, the fight continues. Why? The question escaped Zexathara's lips before she could stop it. Why do you care what happens to species you've never met? Kim's organic eye met Zexathara's gaze while her cybernetic one continued scanning the room. Because someone has to. Because if we don't stand up for the people who can't stand up for themselves, then what makes us any different from the monsters? Chen moved back to the table, his presence somehow filling the room despite his relatively small stature. The Confederation rules through fear, Admiral. They convince everyone that resistance is futile, that the best you can hope for is to be a comfortable slave. But humans, we're very bad at being slaves. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Zexathara's aide's voice filled the room. Admiral, we're receiving communications from Confederation High Command. They're ordering immediate engagement with the human fleet. The room fell silent. Everyone understood that they had reached the point of no return. Chen looked directly at Zexathara. What's it going to be, Admiral? Orders from the High Council, or doing what's right? Chapter 3. The Battle for Freedom, the next few minutes. Stretched like hours as Zexathara stared at the communication panel. Confederation High Command was demanding an immediate response to their engagement orders. Around the table, the humans waited with the patience of predators, their eyes never leaving her face. Admiral, her aide's voice came through the comm, again more urgent this time. High Command is requesting confirmation of attack vectors. They're threatening to replace you if you don't respond immediately. Zexthara's 4 eyes met Chen's 2. In that moment, she saw something that changed everything. Not conquest or domination, but hope. These humans genuinely believed they could make the galaxy a better place. "Patch me through to the fleet," she said finally. Chen raised an eyebrow, but remained silent. "All ships, this is Admiral Zexthara. Stand down from combat readiness. I repeat, stand down." The response was immediate chaos. Multiple voices flooded the comm channel, demanding clarification, questioning orders, some openly refusing to comply. "Admiral," came the voice of Captain Morth from the heavy cruiser. "Divine retribution. High Command has given explicit orders to engage the human fleet. Are you countermanding direct orders from the High Council?" Zexthara looked around the table at the humans. Kim nodded encouragingly. Morrison cracked his knuckles, a sound that somehow conveyed both threat and approval. Chen simply waited. "Captain Morth, I am invoking Admiral's privilege under Section 7 of the Military Code. I am assuming full responsibility for this fleet's actions." There was a long pause before Morth responded. "Admiral, that's treason." "No, Captain. That's command." Kim leaned forward. "Admiral, I should mention that we've been monitoring your fleet's communications. About half your ships are already preparing to break off and follow Confederation orders regardless of what you decide." Chen nodded grimly. Captain Morth's ship just armed its weapons systems, along with the cruisers, Righteous Fury and Stellar, Dominance, and about 15 escort vessels. Morrison's mechanical fingers began flexing in a rhythm that suggested he was running combat calculations. "They're forming an attack formation. Classic Confederation pincer movement." Zexthara felt her world collapsing around her. She had led these ships for over a decade. These officers had served under her command, trusted her judgment, followed her into battle countless times. Now she was asking them to commit what the Confederation would consider the ultimate betrayal. "Admiral," Chen's voice was surprisingly gentle, "you need to decide right now whether you're going to fight for the Confederation or against it. Because in about 30 seconds, Captain Morth is going to open fire on my ships and we're going to have to respond." The tactical display showed the human fleet beginning to disperse into what Kim recognized as an extremely sophisticated combat formation. These weren't the random movements of undisciplined raiders. This was precision military coordination at its finest. "How many ships do you really have?" Zexthara asked. "In this system, 43 combat vessels," Morrison replied without hesitation. "But we're not the only humans in the galaxy, Admiral. We're just the ones who happen to be in the neighborhood." Zexthara made her choice. All ships loyal to this command form defensive positions around the human fleet. All ships choosing to follow High Command directives, you are hereby relieved of duty under this command. The tactical display erupted into chaos as the Confederation fleet split apart. 28 ships moved to support Zexthara's position, while 29 vessels aligned themselves with Captain Morth's rebellion against her orders. "Well," Chen said, watching the display, "that's about what we expected." "You expected this?" Kim smiled, and Zexthara was beginning to understand that human smiles could be very dangerous things. "Captain, we've been studying Confederation military doctrine for 3 years. We know exactly how your officers think, how they'll react. Under pressure, who can be turned and who can't." Morrison pointed to the display where Captain Morth's ships were advancing. "Morth's a traditionalist, follows orders without question, believes in the system completely. He'll fight to the death rather than admit the Confederation might be wrong." But Captain Velth, on the silent contemplation, Chen indicated another ship. "She's been questioning High Command's policies for months. Her ship just moved to support your position." Zexthara stared at them in amazement. "You know my officers better than I do." "We know everyone in your fleet, Admiral," Kim said simply. "Their service records, their psychological profiles, their family situations, their personal beliefs. We've been preparing for this moment for a very long time." Before Zexthara could respond, the battle began. Captain Morth's forces opened fire with a devastating barrage of plasma cannons and quantum Torpedoes. The attack was perfectly coordinated, designed to overwhelm the human fleet's defenses through sheer firepower. It might have worked against any other opponent. The human ships responded like a single organism. They didn't simply evade the incoming fire. They seemed to anticipate it, moving into positions that turned the Confederation's attack formation into a liability. Energy weapons that should have found their targets instead struck empty space or, in several cases, hit other Confederation vessels. Impossible, breathed Navigation Officer Clythe, who had remained on the bridge. Their ships are moving in, patterns that violate basic physics. Chen tapped his communicator. Morrison, show them what human engineering can do. The massive Sergeant Major grinned, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. With pleasure, Captain. On the tactical display, the human ship designated Vengeance of Terra suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, its hull glowing with energy that the Confederation sensors couldn't identify. It passed through the middle of Morth's formation, like a knife through flesh, its weapon systems firing continuously. But these weren't conventional weapons. Energy beams that bent around defensive shields, projectiles that split into dozens of smaller munitions mid-flight, and strangest of all, devices that seemed to disrupt the molecular cohesion of their targets, causing Confederation ships to simply fall apart as if their hulls had forgotten how to hold together. What are those weapons? Zexathera whispered. Innovation, Kim replied. See, the thing about humans is that we're really, really good at finding new ways to break things. Your Confederation has been using the same military technology for centuries. We've been developing new weapon systems for every battle we fight. The human ship, Terra's Hammer, demonstrated the truth of Kim's words by firing what appeared to be a conventional missile at the cruiser, Divine Retribution. Instead of exploding on impact, the missile burrowed into the ship's hull and began consuming the vessel from the inside out, converting its own mass into more missiles that spread to nearby ships like a technological plague. Captain Morth's voice screamed across the comm channels. What are these monsters? What kind of weapons are these? Chen's response was broadcast to every ship in the system. The kind of weapons you develop when you refuse to surrender. The kind of technology you create when your survival depends on being better than everyone who wants to destroy you. The battle raged for 27 minutes. When it ended, Captain Morth's rebellion had been completely shattered. Of the 29 ships that had chosen to follow Confederation orders, only 7 remained functional, and they were in full retreat. The human fleet had suffered exactly 0 casualties. Zexathara stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. How is that possible? Because we've been fighting this war for a lot longer than you realize, Chen said quietly. The Confederation isn't our first enemy, Admiral. It's just our latest. Morrison leaned back in his chair, his mechanical arms folding behind his head. The thing about humans is that we learn from every fight. Every battle makes us stronger, smarter, more dangerous. Your Confederation has been the dominant power in this galaxy for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt. Kim nodded toward the fleeing Confederation ships. Those vessels will report back to High Command that they encountered an unknown, hostile force with superior technology. Within a week, every military installation in Confederation space will be analyzing our weapons signatures and trying to develop countermeasures. And that's exactly what we want them to do, Chen said, with another of those dangerous smiles. Because while they're trying to figure out how to counter the weapons we use today, we'll be developing entirely new ones for tomorrow's battles. The human captain moved to the viewport, looking out at the stars. This is just the beginning. Admiral, today 1 Confederation fleet chose freedom over obedience. Tomorrow it will be 10 fleets. Next month entire sectors will be in open rebellion. The High Council will never allow it, Zexathara said. They'll mobilize the entire military to crush any uprising. Let them try, Morrison rumbled. The bigger they make their response, the more people will see them for what they really are. Tyrants who maintain power through fear and violence. Chen turned back to face Zexathara. Admiral, you've just fired the first shot in a revolution that's going to transform this entire galaxy. The question is, are you ready to see it through to the end? Outside the viewport, human ships were already jumping to other systems, carrying word of the victory to resistance cells across Confederation space. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had arrived, and they were nothing like any species that had come before. Chapter 4. The Ripple Effect. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler 442, the galaxy had begun to burn. Admiral Zexathara stood in the command center of humanity's newest ally, a massive space station that had once been Confederation mining platform Epsilon 7. The station now served as the headquarters for what the humans called the Liberation Fleet, and its transformation was remarkable. Where once sterile Confederation corridors had enforced conformity and obedience, the station now buzzed with the organized chaos of revolution. Representatives from 17 different species worked side by side, their various physiologies accommodated by human engineering that seemed to reshape reality itself. Status report, Zexathara requested, still adjusting to her new role as strategic coordinator for the Liberation Fleet. Commander Kim looked up from a holographic display that showed star charts spanning half the galaxy. Her cybernetic implants had been upgraded with technology that combined human innovation with contributions from their new alien allies. The Rigel system fell yesterday, Kim reported. The local Confederation garrison surrendered without firing, a shot when the human task force arrived. Apparently, word of our new weapons has spread faster than High Command anticipated. Morrison, now bearing the title of Tactical Operations Director, pointed to another section of the display. The Vega colonies have declared independence. 3 Confederation cruiser groups tried to restore order, but they were discouraged by Captain Rodriguez and the Retribution. Zexathara had learned not to ask for details about human discouragement. Tactics. The results spoke for themselves. More importantly, Kim continued, we're receiving volunteers from species we haven't even contacted yet. The Altarians have sent a delegation offering to share their shipbuilding technology. The Vreks are providing biological enhancements for our soldiers. Even the isolated Tauri have opened diplomatic channels. Chen entered the command center, his appearance dramatically changed from their first meeting. Gone was the makeshift uniform and battle-scarred demeanor. In its place was a man who looked like he had been born to command a galactic rebellion. His clothes were still practical, but they now incorporated design elements from dozens of different species, a visual symbol of the alliance he was building. Admiral, he greeted Zexathara with genuine warmth. I trust Commander Kim has brought you up to speed on our recent successes? Success is one word for it, Zexathara replied carefully. Captain, we're receiving reports that entire star systems are declaring independence. The Confederation is losing control of territories they've held for centuries. Good, Chen said, simply. That's the idea. But the High Council won't tolerate this level of defiance. They're mobilizing the entire First Fleet, over 300 vessels. When they arrive, they won't be interested in negotiation or surrender. They'll glass every rebellious world from orbit. Morrison's laugh was like distant thunder. Let them. Come. We've been hoping they'd do something that stupid. Zexathara looked between the humans, recognizing the expression she had learned to associate with particularly dangerous planning. What aren't you telling me? Kim manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a system that Zexathara didn't recognize. Admiral, meet the Sol system, our home. The display showed a modest star system with several planets and an impressive array of defensive installations. But as Zexathara looked closer, she realized the scale was all wrong. Those aren't defensive stations, she breathed. Those are shipyards. The largest shipyards in the galaxy, Chen confirmed. We've been building ships for 50 years, Admiral. Every vessel you've seen so far is from our exploration and first contact fleets. Our actual military is considerably larger. The display zoomed out, revealing the true scope of human space. Dozens of star systems, hundreds of worlds, thousands of space installations, all connected by a transportation network that made Confederation jump technology look primitive. How long? Zexathara asked weakly. How long have you been preparing for this war? Since the day we discovered we weren't alone in the universe, Morrison replied. See, humans have this thing about being conquered. We really, really don't like it. So when we found out there was a galactic government that ruled through fear and oppression, well, we decided that had to change. Chen activated another display showing ship construction statistics. The vessels we've deployed so far represent about 5% of our total military capacity. We wanted to see how the Confederation would respond to limited resistance before committing our main forces. 5%? Zexithara's voice was barely a whisper. The humans have a saying, Kim said, her cybernetic eye glowing brightly. Never fight a land war in Asia. But they have another saying too. If you want peace, prepare for war. We've been preparing for a very long time. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. The image of Captain Sarah Okafor materialized in the center of the command room. The first African human Zexithara had met, her dark skin bearing ritual scarification that somehow managed to look both ancient and futuristic. Chen, we've got movement in the Confederation core systems. Admiral Gorthak is leading the first fleet out of space dock. 317 vessels, including their newest dreadnoughts. Right on schedule, Chen replied. How long until they reach the rebel systems? 4 days at maximum warp. They're not trying to hide their approach. This is meant to be a show of force. Morrison cracked his knuckles, the sound somehow conveying anticipation. Admiral Gorthak, didn't we fight his forces at the Proxima Centauri incident? Different Gorthak, Kim corrected. This one's the nephew, supposed to be even more ruthless than his uncle. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Perfect. Admiral, Zexithara, would you like to see what happens when someone tries to intimidate humanity? Before Zexithara could respond, alerts began flashing throughout the command center. The tactical display lit up with jump signatures appearing throughout local space. Not dozens of ships, but hundreds. The human fleet was arriving. Zexithara watched in amazement as vessel after vessel materialized around the station, but these weren't the improvised-looking ships she had grown accustomed to. These were sleek, deadly, and built with a unified design philosophy that spoke of industrial capacity beyond imagination. Admiral, Chen said formally, I'd like you to meet the Terran Liberation Navy, all 18,000 vessels of it. The number hit Zexithara like a physical blow. The entire Confederation military consisted of fewer than 8,000 ships, and they were spread across the entire galaxy. Humanity had assembled a fleet more than twice that size in a single system. This is impossible, she whispered. No species could build so many ships without anyone noticing. The thing about humans, Morrison said with another of those terrifying grins, is that we're very good at keeping secrets. Especially when keeping those secrets means the difference between freedom and slavery. Captain Okafor's image flickered as her ship moved into formation with the massive fleet. Chen, we've received word from the outer colonies. The Confederation fleet is proceeding as predicted. They should reach the Vega system in approximately 72 hours. Excellent. Signal all commanders. Operation Reckoning is a go. Zexithara looked around the command center at the humans preparing for what could only be described as the largest military engagement in galactic history. Captain, Chen, what have you done? Chen's expression grew serious, and for a moment Zexithara glimpsed the weight of responsibility he carried. What we had to do, Admiral, what no one else was willing to do, we're ending the Confederation's reign of terror, permanently. And if you're wrong, if this rebellion fails, then at least we'll have died free, Kim said simply. And that's more than most species in this galaxy can say. Outside the viewports, the human fleet began its transformation from a defensive formation to an offensive strike force. Ships that had seemed impossibly large were dwarfed by vessels that could only be described as mobile battle stations. The space around the station filled with energy signatures that made Confederation dreadnoughts look like shuttlecraft. Admiral Gorthak has no idea what he's flying into, Morrison observed with satisfaction. He's thinking he's going to crush a small rebellion with overwhelming force. Instead, he's about to learn why humans never ever give up. Chen moved to the main viewport, looking out at the fleet that represented humanity's answer to galactic tyranny. In 72 hours, Admiral. The galaxy is going to discover that there's a new power among the stars, and we're not interested in ruling anyone. We're interested in making sure no one rules anyone else. The Liberation Fleet began its jump sequence, thousands of ships disappearing into hyperspace with destination vectors that would bring them face to face with the largest military force the Confederation had ever assembled. The final battle for the galaxy's freedom was about to begin. Epilogue: A New Dawn. 6 months later, the former Confederation Council chambers on Alpha Centauri Prime had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. A true representative assembly where every member species had an equal voice. Admiral Zexathara, now bearing the title of Transitional Authority Coordinator, watched as delegates from over 200 different worlds debated the formation of what they were calling the Galactic Democratic Alliance. The discussions were chaotic, sometimes heated but never violent. The humans had insisted on that. Violence as a means of political control was simply not acceptable. Still getting used to all this? Chen asked, joining her at the observation deck that overlooked the assembly floor. It's different, Zexathara admitted. In the Confederation, decisions were made by the High Council and implemented without question. This process is messy, inefficient, and often frustrating. But it's fair, Chen pointed out. Every voice gets heard, every concern gets addressed. It takes longer, but the results are legitimate because everyone participated in creating them. Below them, a heated debate was taking place between representatives from former Confederation client species about resource allocation and territorial boundaries. What amazed Zexathara was that no one was reaching for weapons or making threats. They were actually listening to each other. What happened to the High Council? She asked. Chen's expression grew somber. They're on trial for crimes against sentient beings. Fair trials, with legal representation and due process. Some will probably be executed, others will face long prison sentences. A few might even be released if they can prove they were following orders under duress. And Admiral Gorthak? Alive, believe it or not. He surrendered after we destroyed his flagship. He's been surprisingly cooperative in helping us understand Confederation military structure and identify war criminals. Zexathara nodded. The Battle of Vega had lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Confederation First Fleet had arrived expecting to face a ragtag collection of rebels, and had instead encountered the full might of human military technology. The result had been less a battle than a demonstration of what happened when you underestimated humanity. Captain, she said carefully, there's something I need to ask you. Admiral, the humans could rule the galaxy now. Your technology is centuries ahead of anyone else's. Your military is unmatched. Your industrial capacity is beyond anything we've ever seen. Why are you giving power to the very people you just liberated? Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching the delegates below argue about trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Because ruling people is what the Confederation did, Admiral. We didn't fight a war to replace one tyranny with another. He gestured toward the assembly floor where a Vrex delegate was passionately arguing for expanded medical research sharing, while an Altarian representative proposed new environmental protection standards. Look at them, Chen continued. 6 months. Ago, most of these species had never spoken to each other except through Confederation intermediaries. Now they're working together to solve problems, sharing knowledge, building something better than what came before. But surely you could guide them more efficiently. No. Chen's voice was firm, but not unkind. The moment we start making decisions, for other people for their own good, we become exactly what we fought against. Democracy is messy and slow and sometimes frustrating, but it's the only system that treats people as equals instead of subjects. Commander Kim approached from across the observation deck, her cybernetic implants now incorporating design elements from a dozen different species, a living symbol of the cooperation the Alliance represented. Chen, we're getting reports from the Outer Rim territories. The cleanup operations are proceeding ahead of schedule. Cleanup operations? Zexathara asked. Dismantling the last of the Confederation's forced labor camps and prison colonies, Kim explained. It turns out they're We're a lot more of them than even we realized. We've liberated over 3 million beings in the past month alone. Morrison joined them, his mechanical arms now upgraded with technology that seamlessly blended human engineering with innovations from their new allies. The rehabilitation programs are working better than expected, too. Most of the former prisoners are choosing to stay in the systems where they were freed, helping to build new communities. Chen nodded with satisfaction. That was always the hope. People who've been oppressed understand the value of freedom better than anyone. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. The holographic image of Captain Okafor materialized, her expression serious, but not alarmed. Chen, we've got a situation developing in the outer spiral territories. Long-range sensors are detecting what appears to be a massive fleet movement. Unknown configuration, unknown origin. The mood on the observation deck shifted immediately. Zexthara felt her respiratory slits constrict as she recognized the implications. How massive? Chen asked, his demeanor instantly transitioning from diplomat to military commander. Preliminary estimates suggest over 5,000 vessels. They're moving in formation toward the former Confederation core worlds. Morrison's mechanical fingers began their familiar rhythm of combat calculations. Could be Confederation loyalists making one last desperate attempt to restore the old order. Or, Kim said quietly, it could be something else entirely. We always knew that breaking up the Confederation would create a power vacuum. Maybe someone else has decided to fill it. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Admiral Zexthara, in all your years of service with the Confederation, did you ever encounter references to other galactic powers? Species or civilizations beyond Confederation space? Zexthara's four eyes widened as she understood the implication. You think this might be an external threat? The galaxy's a big place, Chen said simply. The Confederation controlled maybe 15% of it. We always wondered what was in the other 85%. Below them, the assembly session continued, delegates unaware that their new democracy might be facing its first major external challenge. Zexthara watched them argue about agricultural subsidies and education standards, and realized how precious this chaotic, inefficient, beautiful process really was. What do we do? She asked. Chen's smile returned, not the dangerous expression she had learned to fear, but something warmer and more confident. What we always do, Admiral. We adapt. We learn. We protect the people who can't protect themselves. He activated his communicator. All fleet commanders, this is Chen. Implement Defense Protocol 7. I want battle groups positioned at every major population center and industrial facility. And get me a line to Admiral Martinez at the Sol Defense Command. As the humans began, coordinating their response to this new threat, Zexthara marveled at their calm efficiency. There was no panic, no desperate scrambling for orders from higher authority. Every person knew their role, and executed it with the confidence that came from serving a cause they truly believed in. You're not worried, she observed. Concerned, yes. Worried, no. Chen looked out at the assembly floor where delegates were finally reaching consensus on a particularly complex trade agreement. We've spent 50 years preparing for unknown threats, Admiral. Whatever's coming, we'll face it the same way we faced the Confederation. Together, Kim added, her cybernetic eye focusing on the distant stars. All of us working toward something better. Morrison chuckled, the sound somehow reassuring despite his intimidating appearance. Besides, if these new arrivals are anything like the Confederation, they're about to learn why you don't pick fights with species that refuse to surrender. As if summoned by their conversation, one of the assembly delegates, a graceful Altarian with silver-blue skin, approached the observation deck. Captain Chen, she said in the melodious voice characteristic of her species, we couldn't help but notice the increased military activity. Is there a threat to the Alliance? Chen looked down at the delegate, Ambassador Silandra, one of the most effective advocates for the new democratic system, and made a decision that would have been impossible under the old Confederation system. There might be, he said honestly. We're detecting a large fleet of unknown origin approaching our space. We don't know their intentions yet, but we're taking precautions. Silandra's large eyes showed concern but not fear. What can we do? To help? Keep doing exactly what you're doing down there, Chen replied. Keep building something worth defending. Leave the military concerns to us. With respect, Captain, this is our alliance too now. If there's a threat to all of us, then all of us should face it together. Morrison grinned. I like her. Kim nodded agreement. The ambassador has a point, Chen. This isn't just humanity's fight anymore. Chen considered this, then activated the Assembly's communication system. His voice filled the chamber below, instantly commanding the attention of every delegate. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings of all classifications, he began. I need to inform you of a developing situation that may affect the security of our alliance. As Chen briefed the Assembly on the approaching fleet, Zexathara watched the delegates' reactions. There was concern, yes, but also something else. Determination. These beings who had lived under oppression for so long were not willing to give up their newfound freedom without a fight. When Chen finished his briefing, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Species after species stood to offer their support. Military vessels, logistical assistance, intelligence resources, even the small contributions that individually seemed insignificant, but collectively represented the unified will of hundreds of worlds. Well, Chen said quietly to his companions, looks like we're not facing this alone. Zexthara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades, genuine hope for the future. Whatever was coming toward them from the depths of space, they would meet it not as subjects of an empire or tools of a government, but as free beings choosing to stand together. The age of the Confederation was over. The age of the Alliance had begun. And as Captain Marcus Chen had promised 6 months earlier, the galaxy would never be the same.